To order. First order of business is discussion of the fiscal year 2022 to 2031 capital improvements program and plan. Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, this afternoon's presentation will provide City Council an overview of the proposed FY22 through FY2031 capital improvement program and plan. During the presentation, it will be apparent that the plan continues to complete or various ongoing projects and initiatives. As you may be aware, yesterday at the Planning Commission meeting, they did approve and pass along this proposed CIP with one recommendation of condensing broadband funding of the first 5 years into 1 year. We will talk to that as part of the presentation. With that, at this time, Ms. Teelan Hansen, Director of Finance, is at the podium and will give the presentation to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. It is my pleasure to be here today to present to you the fiscal year 2022 through 2031. I'm going to get those dates wrong a lot. Capital Improvement Program and Plan. What we will focus on during this presentation is really just the first 5 years. It is a 10-year plan. However, once you get into years 6 through 10, of course, priorities differ and change between now and then, and so we'll focus on those first 5 years. As the manager stated, this plan is really, you're going to see a lot of things related to finishing projects that we've already committed to and finishing projects that we've already started. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. The presentation is going to look a little different if you've had the distinct privilege of watching me give this presentation in years past. It was a very, very long slide deck. We have condensed the slide deck into this grid format, but I will talk in narrative about the different projects, and I will refer you to the pages in the books that you hopefully have in front of you for the details of where those projects can be found. So as we get started here, this is the first grid that you're going to see, and this is the projects as they are proposed by fund for the first 5 years of the plan. So I'll draw attention to a few specific numbers on this screen for you that I want to highlight, and we'll talk about in detail in a little bit. First and foremost, you can see there in fiscal year 22, which is year 1 of the plan, we have a total proposed projects across all the funds of $60,519,085. You can see then that the projects, the amount maintains somewhat consistency through the first 5 years. The next number I'll draw your attention to is that one on the far bottom right-hand corner that's highlighted in yellow. That is $353,776,732. That is the total project cost for the first 5 years as proposed in this plan for all the funds. I'd like to draw your attention to the numbers there at the bottom where it says GO capacity. If you're familiar with how the plan works, or for those of you who are somewhat new to the plan, the city has a capacity to issue debt of approximately $30 million a year. The plan as it's written currently shows us issuing all of that $30 million in year 1. Years 2 through 5, we have a little bit of capacity. But as you're aware, this is an ever-evolving document, and as we get to this point next year, this plan will look a little bit different for years 1, which is year 2 in this plan, through year 5. So I just want to draw your attention that we are, in order to finish some of these projects that we previously committed to, we have maxed out or are using all of our available debt capacity in year 1, but we do have some capacity in years 2 through 5. The last number I'm going to draw your attention to on this particular screen is the general government fund number, which is $247,494,042 for the whole 5-year plan. The general government fund is where we is kind of a catch-all fund where we put all the parks and recreation projects, all the public safety projects, all the transportation projects, all of our capital building and maintenance, our airports, and so all of those types of projects fall under that general government fund and are funded by, the debt service on those is funded by tax dollars. The next slide is going to break those funds down by specific funding source, and so we'll start with public utilities, and you can see that we have a mixture of public utility revenue bonds planned out for the 5 years, as well as transfers of cash from the Public Utilities Fund to balance out the payment method on those projects with a mix of bonds and cash. You can see that for the full 5 years, we're planning on cash funding approximately $29.2 million worth of public utilities projects and issuing approximately $45.6 million worth of revenue bonds. The fleet fund, we have one project that is scheduled to be funded by general obligation bonds out in year 4. The Stormwater Fund, you can see there's a mixture of funding sources there between some miscellaneous revenue sources, some state transportation dollars, as well as cash transfers from the Stormwater Fund. This next slide is the second page of that, and you can see that the Transit Fund, there's some projects, and those are projected to be paid for. The revenue sources on that are state and federal grant funds, as well as a transfer from the Transit Fund. And the general obligation bonds is listed, that's in the out years. Sometimes you're going to see in this grid format some things that are listed with no dollar amounts next to them. That generally indicates that the funding for that is planned in years 6 through 10. The Information Technology Fund, we're planning on a mixture of general fund dollars as well as general obligation bonds. And the General Government Fund, as I mentioned, where it's kind of a catch-all for most of our governmental type projects, we have a mixture of state transportation funds, state and federal grant funds, transfers from the general fund, that is our PAYGO, that is the cash that we use to meet our PAYGO or our pay-as-you-go cash-funded capital policy, transfers from the road maintenance fund, as well as general obligation bonds. Again, I draw your attention to that $247,494,042 amount. That is the amount that we're going to look at in a little bit more detail on the next several slides. So as we move to this slide, this is a pie chart that shows of those general government expenditures. That's that $247 million number that drew your attention to for the first 5 years. How these break down by functional category. So you can see that 47% of those projects are transportation related, 23% of them are public education related, public buildings and facilities at 12%, public safety at 9%, village and neighborhoods at 5%, and parks and recreation at 4%. The next slide shows that same $247 million as broken down by revenue sources, and so you can see that the biggest piece of the pie there is 57% of those projects are scheduled to be paid for with general obligation bonds, and 32% with state, federal, and other grant type dollars, and then our general fund cash covers 11% of the project cost. I want to make note on this slide that the next slide we're going to see is another pie chart, but what we're going to do is we're going to take that $247 million worth of projects and we're going to take out the pieces that are funded by that blue piece of the pie. And so the next slide that you're going to see is a pie chart of the functional categories of expenditures for the capital improvement plan if we take out those pieces of the projects that are funded by federal and state grant dollars. So what this does is this shows us the projects and where they break down functionally if you're just looking at local funding. So those projects that have bonds or cash funding on them. And that changes the mix on the top two significantly. Public education now is 34% of that piece. And then transportation, which was 47% on the previous slide, is now 24%. What that tells us is we have a lot of transportation dollars that are paying for projects that are not locally sourced dollars. They are coming from federal and state grant dollars. The rest of the categories remain about the same. Public buildings and facilities at 16%, public safety increases just a little bit to 13%, village and neighborhoods at 7%, and parks and rec at 5%. With that, I'm going to get into the actual projects and give a brief explanation of each project that you see, and we'll flip through. I will give you page numbers for reference if you want to turn to the page in your book that contains the details on these projects. So we're looking first at public buildings and facilities, and the page number that this starts on in your book is page number 12. And just a side note here, this document is available online for anyone who wants to access it and look at it and study it. It is available out there online on the city's webpage. So public buildings and facilities, starting on page 12. We start with the airport projects, and the first project there is obstruction removal. And what this does is this provides funding to remove the vegetative obstructions that surround the airport. This project is primarily paid for with state and federal grant dollars, and 2% of that is our local funding. The next project is a roof replacement on Box Hangar 7. That is pretty self-explanatory by the title. That is 100% local funding. The corporate hangar, this is 20% funding for the local design. What this does is plan for the construction of a corporate hangar that will help recruit corporate customers out at the airport. Drainage rehabilitation is to reconstruct subsurface drainage pipes out at the airport that are in need of repair and or replacement. Again, that is primarily funded through state and federal dollars. The last airport project there is the airport master plan update, also funded primarily by state and federal grant dollars. And what that does is updates the master plan to include all of the changes and things that have changed out at the airport over the last 10 years. Moving into city buildings, we have public building capital maintenance. This is something that you see on a regular basis and we fund annually. This provides maintenance funding to maintain and repair things in all of our public buildings and facilities. You will see there that the first year funding is slightly higher. What the additional funding in the first year does is allow for the HVAC unit to be replaced out at the animal care shelter. The central library is funded in years 1, 2, and 3. This is the construction funding for the central library. We've been discussing that project for a number of years, and this lays out the construction funding for that project. The Godwin Courts building improvements, there's funding out in year 3 of the plan, and what this does is this will complete the improvements that we've already started out at the Godwin Courts building. That building, I believe, is about 22 years old at this point in time, and needs a little bit of love. This also includes funding for furnitures and fixtures and equipment out at that building. The Joint Operations Facility for Police and Parks and Recreation, which is currently being constructed out at the Carolina Road location, the funding here is to complete the funding necessary to finish this project. And the the Human Resources Building renovation, this is to renovate the building across the street, we call it the old HR building, to move the school administration offices into that building, and the funding here will provide for the ability to do that on the schedule that we're on. Moving next into public schools, which starts on page 41 of your book. We have a couple of 3 projects there in the first 5 years. The first one is the school's major repairs and systems replacement. This is a strategy that we've been doing for several years to give the schools a certain dollar amount every year that they can use to repair and replace major systems within their schools. If you'll remember or have looked at CIPs in the past, you will have seen another project called Hazardous Materials Abatement or Management, and that was at $75,000 a year. We have combined those 2 projects into one, which gives the schools a little bit more flexibility in what they can do with those funds as they need. The second one is funding in years 2 and 3 to complete the second phase of the operations facility. The schools several years ago undertook a project to move some of their central facilities out to the old Mount Zion Elementary area, built a new operations facility out there. They are in there and functioning in there. This is the second phase of that in order to move their maintenance and operations division out there, as well as the divisions that have already moved out there. And the third project is to start and construct a replacement school for JFK Middle School. Moving into information technology, which is on page 71 of the books, we have several projects here. The first is a disaster recovery or data center backup. This funding is to provide for a new backup data center that will ensure business continuity for the city's information technology systems. The second one here is physical security. This is the second and third year of funding on this particular project to increase and upgrade the physical security around the city facilities. This includes badge access and those types of things. The last one there is the internet access expansion. As the city manager mentioned, the Planning Commission approved this plan as it is yesterday, with the recommendation that they would like to see all of the $1.2 million that is spread over the 5 years of this plan condensed into year one. We do have it currently shown as $250,000 a year to increase access to the internet in underserved areas of the city. Moving into Parks and Rec, which is on page 4 of your books, and I apologize, this is kind of out of order, and I know I'm flipping you back and forth. I apologize for that. The first project here is the Parks and Rec capital maintenance. Like the capital maintenance we have on our city buildings and facilities, this is annual funding that goes towards Parks and Rec to do maintenance and repairs at our parks facilities throughout the city. There is a little bit of an increase in year one on this, and what that increased funding provides for is security fencing at the Parks and Recreation Admin Building and at East Suffolk Rec Center. The second project there is the Lone Star Lakes Park, and there's funding in year one, and what that is to design a wayside park at Butler Tract. Additional funding starting in year 3 is for some additional improvements out at Lone Star Lakes. The timing of this coincides with a project that you're going to see in the Transportation Division as we plan on relocating Zone C out of that facility to allow for more expansions and things out at Lone Star Lakes. The third project is trail enhancements, and what this does is provide a little bit of funding to enhance the existing trails in the city. Sleepy Hole Park renovations, not reservations, excuse me, provides for funding for improvements at the Sleepy Hole Park, including a dog park, accessible parking, road repair, and other amenities out at that park. Water access at the Nansemond River, you see funding here for design and construction of water access at the Nansemond River, and you will have an item on your 7 o'clock agenda that will provide for some funding towards this project for property acquisition. The aquatic facility, there's some design money in year 4 to start looking at the design of that particular facility. The Constance North Park is to provide for trail parking, trails, parking lots, and a picnic shelter at the location right there on North Main Street between Wendy's and the bridge. Bennett, the Blackwater River provides funding to put trails and a kayak launch out at the Blackwater River Park facility. The Bennett's Creek Park Improvements Project is funding to allow for parking expansion, trail improvements, tennis court rehabilitation, and a skate park expansion out at the Bennett's Creek Park facility. We have a Cedar Hill Slope Stabilization Project, and what this does is provide funding to stabilize the slope on the backside of that cemetery, which is currently failing, and the funding is needed in order to shore that up and make that a safer facility. And the last project in Parks and Rec is the Downtown Recreation Center, and the funding is in year 3, initial funding for design of that particular facility. Moving into Village and Neighborhoods, which is on page 48 in your books, we have those 3 main categories of projects within the Village and Neighborhoods that you've seen before. Of course, the Village and Neighborhood Improvements provides continued funding for closed drainage and street improvements, and the specific areas and projects are listed in the book starting on page 48. Each one of these has a detailed listing in it of where the specific funding is scheduled to go to. The open space improvements is continued funding to provide funding for open space when it becomes available and when the city desires to do so. The third project here is the Downtown Implementation Plan Initiatives, and the funding here provides for streetscaping, the festival event venue, some funding for the Phoenix Bank block, and wayfinding and gateway improvements in the downtown to start implementing, implementing some of those downtown initiatives that were identified in that plan. Moving forward into public safety, and I thought I would entertain you with some colors on the screen in this one. Actually, the colors correlate to one another, and I will explain what they are. We've got the top two projects say fire apparatus. One says various new stations and one says replacements. Excuse me. And so what these two projects do is provide for new and replacement engines, rescue trucks, and ladder trucks for the fire station. The one that is highlighted kind of an orange color, you'll see all those things that are highlighted orange, they all relate to the College Drive Fire Station. So the $1.4 million there in year two is to provide for the apparatus that will be stationed at the College Drive Fire Facility. Similarly, we have two projects here for ambulances, one for replacements and one for new ambulances, and this provides funding to replace and buy new ambulances. And again, that orange colored one is to provide for an ambulance at the College Drive Station. We have the Fire and Rescue Operations Building. This is funding in order to complete the construction on this project. We have the Joint Public Safety Training Center. This section is for the fire department, and what this does is provide funding to complete the burn building and technical rescue tower. The College Drive Fire Station, the funding here completes the funding for construction of the new station up in the College Drive area of the city. And then we have two projects, Station 9 upgrades and Station 4 upgrades, to provide for some renovations and upgrades to those facilities in years 3 and 4. The last public safety project we have is the CAD system replacement. CAD stands for Computer Aided Dispatch. And so this is the system that does a lot for the public safety departments, and the current system that we have has become outdated and needs to support some of our updated applications. And so the funding here is to replace that system with a newer system. Moving forward into transportation, and that starts on page 29 in your books. We have those two, this slide shows those two kind of main projects with some of the sub-projects below it. And so under the local urban roadway construction project, as an umbrella project, we have several projects to provide for planning, design, and construction of various roadways, including funding for Holland Road, Godwin Boulevard, Route 17 road widening, and Shoulders Hill Phase 2. And the funding that you see there in year one for Shoulders Hill Phase 2 is to start initial design to widen Shoulders Hill from the completion of the intersection project a little further south. The next kind of umbrella project that we have in transportation is the local urban intersection construction project. And funding here provides for various intersection improvements, including the projects listed: Nansoma Parkway and Bennett's Pasture, Route 17 and Crittenden Road, Route 58 and Manning Bridge, a diverging diamond interchange, and then the last one there is the Suffolk Bypass, Wilroy, Godwin, Pruden IMR study. And what that is a traffic study to determine what that corridor should look like and how traffic should move through that corridor. Moving forward with additional transportation projects, outside of those two umbrella projects, we have channel dredging, which provides funding for maintenance dredging of Bennett's Creek. We have the Turlington Road Spates Spillway. The SGR there stands for State of Good Repair. This is funding that we get from the state. And what this does is it replaces the Spates Spillway Bridge. That's really hard to say. Nansoma Parkway Wilroy Road flyover. This provides for construction funding for the flyover to bypass the rail crossing at Nansoma Parkway and Wilroy Road. The Pruden Center turn lanes provides funding to address safety concerns by installing left and right turn lanes on Pruden Boulevard at the College and Career Academy at Pruden. Rail crossing improvements provides funding to improve at-grade rail crossings throughout the city as those need to be improved and replaced. The miscellaneous roadway improvements is funding that addresses miscellaneous roadway improvements throughout the city that cannot be covered or fixed with urban maintenance funding. As I mentioned before, there's a project here to relocate Zone C for Public Works, which is currently located at the Lone Star Lakes facility, and this relocates that facility to a different location in the northeastern part of the city. Pittmantown Road over Mill Swamp is to replace the existing bridge at Pittmantown Road and Mill Swamp. The signal timing, the citywide signal timing develops new signal timings for corridors that are in need of coordination as growth and development happens. Freeman Mill over Spivey Swamp replaces the bridge there. The Seaboard Coastline, this is a project that you used to see in the Parks and Rec Department, and we have moved it over to transportation because of the funding sources, the potential funding sources on this. And what this does is provide funding for additional sections of the Suffolk Seaboard Coastline Trail. The Traffic Operations Center provides funding to design and outfit a traffic operations center out at the Public Works facility on Carolina Road. Route 58 improvements, Long Street to Holland Bypass, provides funding to improve that corridor along Route 58 between Long Street Lane and the Holland Bypass. Downtown Railroad warning system. Once you get into a groove here, like some of the words are not coming off my tongue very well. What this does is provide funding to upgrade the downtown signal systems, downtown railroad warning systems at North Main Street. Citywide signal and downtown signals are to provide upgrades to the various signal systems in the both citywide and in the downtown area to enhance safety measures. And the final project here is a non-median break intersection improvements, and this provides non-median break intersections on Route 58, 13, and Route 460. Moving forward into the Stormwater Fund on page 61, the funding here identified for the various projects all provides for design and construction of drainage improvements to relieve flooding throughout the city, and specifically the projects that we've called out. The citywide drainage is for projects throughout the city, and then some bigger projects that we've identified are Old Town Drainage, Steeple Drive in Eclipse, Pewsville, Woodrow in South Suffolk, Jefferson Street, First Avenue, and Sadler Heights. The Fleet Fund on page 69, there's funding in year 4 to provide for the relocation of the city's current fleet facilities, which we share with the schools. The Transit Fund on page 67, we have 2 projects. One is to build a transit operations facility, and so the funding is to design and construct that particular facility. The other project is a bus pullout on College Drive at Kroger to provide for a safer situation with the bus there. And last but certainly not least, we have the Utilities Fund projects, and we're going to break with tradition, and I'm going to cover the Utilities Fund projects today. So we have, under the water projects, we have those 3 main kind of umbrella projects as well. And the details of specific items in there are found on page 58 and 60 in your book. But on page 55 is where we start the utility projects, and under those umbrella projects, we have a variety of things. And so water source development and treatment plant expansion. This project provides for the development, upgrade, and expansion of the city's water supply sources and treatment plant facilities, including specifically various impoundment improvements, EDR membrane replacements, the water plant HVAC upgrades, and well upgrades and evaluations. Water distribution and transmission system expansion is another somewhat umbrella project in the water utility division. What this does is this project provides for the expansion of the city's water distribution and transmission systems, inclusive of system storage. Included in this particular funding set is sections of the Southern Transmission Main, the Wilroy Road 12-inch main, and the Route 58 supply transmission. The umbrella project of water system upgrades is a project that will provide for the replacement and rehabilitation of aging or undersized water distribution system infrastructure, replacement of aging meters and water service lines, and rehab of the city's water storage tanks. Specific items within this funding identified are various neighborhood replacements, water service line replacements, water meter upgrades, and exceptions, and the demolition of the county street water tank. Those more specifics of those projects can be found on page 58 in your book. The two umbrella projects for sewer, the first one is the sanitary sewer extensions, and this is funding to continue efforts to extend the sanitary sewer into existing developed areas that are currently without sewer service. Planned funding is for minor extensions within that project. The sanitary sewer system upgrades is a project that provides for the renovation, rehab, and replacement of the city's sanitary sewer system, including the city's system maintenance, find and fix upgrades, and various pump station electrical and mechanical upgrades. And more specifics can be found on those on page 60 in your book. With that, what are the next steps? Tonight at your 6 p.m., I said 7 p.m. earlier. Old habits die hard sometimes. Tonight at your 6 p.m. meeting, you will have a motion to hold a public hearing, or we ask that you have a motion to hold a public hearing on the CIP at your February 17th meeting. We ask that that public hearing be held at February 17th. At that point in time, staff will take any recommended edits or changes that the City Council provides to us, and we are asking and hoping for adoption of the city's CIP. That's the first opportunity for that, but certainly not the last. As I mentioned before, we have put this plan together. I want to thank everybody who was involved in putting the plan together. It's been several months worth of effort and work to get this across the finish line, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and present it to you tonight. With that being said, myself as well as the department heads who have projects within the plan are here and available to answer any questions that you might have about the specific projects or the funding or anything within the plan. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Council, questions, comments? Councilman Goldberg.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yesterday, I attended the Planning Commission meeting, and they talked about the upgrades to the internet to other places and throughout the city that's in need. And to move that up, I see that we still have the 250, and they want to move it all into the first year. I can understand that. There's a great need for that for schools, and I would hope that we would take a nice hard look at that to see if we could possibly do that to make that happen. The kids now are having a hard time. I hear about it. I feel sure you do, and so it's there. So I would hope that we would take a nice hard look at that. And then the second point, I noticed on the list that we talked about, and I've been talking about it for some time, and I'm sticking to my guns on this, is the downtown community center of some nature or what have you. I see that's 3 years out to even do the study on it, looks like. And I would hope that we would move that up at least up into the coming year to find out about it. I would love to see it built sooner than that so the kids could have that also. But I would like it moved up if we can make that happen. Thank you, Mayor.
Vice Mayor. Go ahead.
Vice Mayor.
You sure? Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
All right. Well, I'll echo what Councilman Goldberg just said, because that was one of my comments too about the broadband. That is something that we definitely need to move up. That is something that with the schools now and what problem they're having, I strongly agree with what he's saying with that. So I agree. Also on the, and this is not, the meter reading, I'm getting a lot of calls about that. The cost of that's a part of, I know that's not a part of the budget, but that's part of what people is concerned about is the water rate, not the rates, the meter reading. And we got some emails about the water treatment and say it's caused cancer, and I don't know anything about that, but I think all the council members have gotten the email about that. So I would like to get some information later on, not tonight, but just springing it on you about what the answer is that we got the emails about on that.
Fawcett?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things. On the Seaboard Trail, in the past, we had received grants to cover a lot of that extension, expansion, and maintenance. Are we still pursuing grants for the Seaboard Trail to alleviate having to put, it looks like in years 3, we're looking at $3 million, and I would think that we would be pursuing very aggressively some grants that should alleviate that. And I know it's out years, I'm just throwing it out there. So that's just one item because I mean, we've been pretty fortunate to get it. I know when we did the one in Driver, we got a grant for it. It didn't come out of pocket that I know of.
So the funding sources as listed in the CIP on page 29 of your book, yes, in year 4 of the plan, we have $3.3 million planned for the Suffolk Seaboard Coastline Trail. The funding sources identified for that are a mixture of grant dollars as well as cash from the general fund.
I mean, I realize we don't know what the grant dollars are going to be technically until you apply and get awarded.
We are anticipating applying for those grant dollars,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. The second thing, in the downtown plan 2 years ago, I think it was, maybe you could help me with that, Mike, is did we not put some funding already out there? And there has been nothing that funding that I can see has been done. If somebody could show me what's been done, I think we put $800,000 out there, and I haven't seen $800,000 worth of anything.
I'll have to ask Kevin Hughes to come up and address specifics of where that project's at.
Good afternoon. So yes, you're correct. We have put some different fundings mechanisms in the different projects in the downtown fund. A lot of those funding mechanisms and projects are attached to engineering as well as property acquisition and marketing and things of the like. And so from a physical improvement standpoint, that stuff is being worked on currently, and so it'll something that you'll see and be able to touch and feel in future years. So I understand your frustration, and everybody wants to see some things, but there's a tremendous amount of work and activity going on to build up towards those things that you'll touch and feel. And I think we have an item in your consent agenda item about advancing some of those things as well. And so funding is in place, but it also, some of the funding and the mechanism, the strategies connected to it do include multiple years in order to have a large-scale payoff in order to complete construction or to purchase a piece of property. So it's a multi-phase project.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, and I go along with Councilman Goldberg and the Vice Mayor on the broadband, if I'm not mistaken, we were kind of briefed a few weeks ago about some funding that might become available to assist us in that, state funding or grant funding. I wonder where we're going with that, and, you know, in lieu of what we're trying to put in here for funding and trying to wrap it all into 1 year, how are we going to pull that off? And it's a twofold question. One, what about the grant? And two, how are we going to fold in all the years into 1 year for that?
Well, let me take the first shot, Ms. Teeling, on this. As you're aware that, of course, our CARES Act funding has been extended for another year. I would suggest that we look at some of that for the first year as we move, that we have the 250, 250, 250. If we can get some movement going, working with our partner on that extension, then it's easily, and if we can do it quickly coming into this year, it's easily be done under some CARES Act funding that we have available still. I know I've been requested a breakdown on that funding that is coming to you all, what we have available, and we still have available funds. I would suggest that we look at that first. Now, of course, we're also waiting on of hearing on the VATI grant. We have not heard that. We expected to hear that in November. We still haven't heard that in January yet. If you remember, you were briefed on that, I think, in around September timeframe, I believe, or August, and we're still waiting for the results of that grant. But as we move ahead, I would think, at least in the first year, that we look at, instead of trying to condense everything into 1 year, that we may look at a different method of going that and probably using some of the available money that we have under the CARES Act, which it would qualify for. The key to this is working with our partner to be able to extend that and getting them moving to work with us. And we're trying to do that. We have staff working and calling with them too. So it's not that we are personally in the cable extension or the broadband extension business. We need a partner. We've got a couple things going on staff-wise that we hope to maybe start moving in a better direction than we've been. This year is really, you're correct, this year has been a test for all those who live in the rural area for education. Actually, we have teachers that live in the rural area that needs to hold classes. And so, we would all love to be able to, turn a switch and have cable everywhere we can, but it's going to be a process. And I would suggest, as far as the funding goes, that we look and try to utilize some of our still available funding that we have been extended a year. In lieu of trying to crunch it all in the first year, we look at the second and third year as we move forward on broadband under our own money. We leave the $250 there today that we have in for the first year. Maybe as we come back next year, that's the time to look at the other million and see what we do there once we get beyond our CARES Act funding, is my suggestion.
Well, we don't know exactly with, you were mentioning the state funding. We haven't heard anything back on that as of yet, correct?
We have not heard back on the Vadi grant at this point.
Vadi grant.
We expected to have, but I have not received anything on it yet.
I mean, at the rate we're going, we'll be through COVID and kids will be back in school before we get broadband. I mean, I know it's a big task, but it's too slow. It's too slow. But anyway, we'll just work with it from there. The other thing is, I'm not going to let this kind of go. I'm going to continue to grind on this because I have a difference of opinion, and I'd like to find a way to put this funding in play. In the fire station up in the Driver, the College Drive fire station up in Driver, up in Harborview. I keep harping on this because, we're getting very close to going to make things happen to get this thing moving. And I'm really concerned about, I've heard we can do this and we can do that on this fourth bay. The third bay of that fire station, 3 bay only, will be obsolete by the time it's built and we start moving the number of people and equipment in there. The fourth bay is going to be paramount on the growth on the north end of Suffolk. The fourth bay is 1,002 feet. If you multiply that by $295, it comes out short of $400,000. I can't even visualize not putting $400,000 into this initial construction right out the gate. And if for some reason, once it goes to bid, if it comes in, I don't know exactly that it'll come under bid, but with today, the price of steel, price of concrete, price of materials are going through the roof. That money should be readily available ahead of that construction or along parallel with this construction, because I don't want to be at the end of the rope here and we go, oh, well, we screwed up, we didn't get the money, we didn't put it in there, we didn't do this, we didn't do that. We're going to have a new staff by the time we get to this fire station. We'll have probably a new manager. We don't know what that new manager is going to be thinking. And I just, for the life of me, can't figure out why we can't put $400,000 into this project right out of the gate. I want guaranteed that fourth bay on this CIP this time. I don't want to wait. So that's my soapbox on that. And I appreciate, Teelan, your presentation today and your information.
Councilman Ward?
Yes, I just want to go back, and maybe it's me, but didn't we give some money to Northern Shores for them classrooms? Was that already allocated to them, or, because I didn't see that up there?
So the development of what has happened with Northern Shores, as you are aware, we are in the process of doing a facility study between us and the schools, and I believe that the manager is working on presenting that to the council and school board at your meeting in February. When we developed this CIP, it was developed knowing that that was coming, and we developed it based on the priorities we were given at the time. Now, the timing of this CIP is we started this back in August, September. So when we talked to the school board, or we talked to the superintendent, the priorities that are listed in the schools are the priorities we were given at that time. They asked us to put the operations facility ahead of the Northern Shores expansion at that time.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but you're trying to say when we allocate money to
We have not allocated funding to the Northern Shores expansion at this point in time, no.
bottom classroom with all them trailers in the back, didn't we talk about that last year?
It was in the plan last year.
Yeah.
It has been changed to a different priority this year with the.
Who changed it?
Councilman, let me address this. When we started out, and of course, we were in the midst of the school study, myself and Dr. Gordon had some conversations on where we were headed. We put in, as my understanding, where our initial priorities were at that point. Now, as the school board has met, they've added back into their requests, which we'll see some of the information coming at your next meeting with the school board. We're finishing up the report. It is going to be presented to you presentation-wise from the consultants along with your meeting with the school board and president. They have now come back and requested that the Northern Shores be moved up, but it's not in the first year. It's in the it's about a year or two what they proposed, but what they sent in was really the priorities, because what we received from them was $227 million a need in the first 5 years. What we glanced from that is not the numbers, but what their priorities are. And of course, they're looking at several school replacements, JFK, Forest Glen, Kilby Shores, and we'll see this gleamed out through the study, which is data-driven. What are the priorities? Now, they have requested Northern Shores expansion be part of it as we start talking about these. But the first year, what we're looking at is how we've laid it out. And Dr. Gordon, the only thing they moved into the first year that we did not have in there, subsequent to us doing the CIP, when they received it, was the first part of the phase 2 of their ops center. Was moved in, not a school replacement, but not Northern Shores in the upcoming year. So as we move through the school, and the thought of the study was to generate the plan through a data process, data generate how the conditions are, what the growth are, those type of parameters. So as we move back and coming forward, and that's why I wanted to propose you to have the CIP today, the school meeting next, and before we even get to the public hearing for the CIP on February 17th, to give us that time to work through these elements which you've just brought up, both the schools and some of the other things that we're talking about today.
Well, I understand that, but here I thought we had a little discussion about that, and when you running for something and you said you thought we had that money allocated going towards that, and I was here at the meeting when the school board suggested not to, and I was here at that school board meeting. So what I'm saying to you, if we allocate some money for a certain school, and then we change up because they want to change their mind and do another school, I just don't see that, because we got a couple of schools are really in bad shape. And each one of them want that money to make their school better. So I don't, if we vote for something, I think that we should stand right there in what we're going to do with it. I don't know if they can change it, but what I'm saying, if they tell the people they got this money, we're going to get classrooms, we're going to get this park in the back, and all of a sudden I don't see it up there. So I got a concern with that. Even though we're going to talk, we'll meet, but I just like when they discuss it that night, it was back and forth, and why would they take money that we already plan on giving them? So I didn't agree with that, but I'll sit and see where you're going with this, and I'll talk with you about it. But I just want to make sure, because it's already been almost like y'all gonna get this for the classrooms. Now they're gonna change the school board. Superintendent gonna change their mind. I just can't follow that right now. The other thing is, when is the fire in College Drive, when is that building, when is it gonna happen? The new fire station, do you know?
Gary Jones can come up and talk about the construction schedule of that particular facility.
Okay, thank you. I just want to know if they asked me.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Yes, the College Drive Fire Station. Where we are status-wise, we're currently in the design process. We are under contract with the design firm of RRMM Architects. Schedule-wise, we're planning on having design complete, and we'll be designing a full base station. We'll be bidding a full base station by the end of the summer. Early fall, late summer, early fall, we'll be soliciting bids for construction. The plan is to start construction sometime in the early fall and finish in about 12 months from there. So fall of '22 is when we plan on opening that station. Okay?
One more question. How about the Burn Hall Manor, and that's on Route 17? You know where that status is at? Do you know anything about that? Because I don't see it up there.
LJ Hansen can come up and speak.
Okay, yeah, I know at one time we had to wait for transit, so I want to see where's that at.
Good afternoon. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That was part of the Smart Scale application that we made
Okay.
to the Commonwealth Transportation Board.
Right.
We have not received final scores on those yet. We received some preliminary scores today, just today, as a matter of fact. It did not meet the preliminary scores, but we do not have final scores. So it is in the CIP under those major categories that Teelan spoke about.
Okay.
It's in there, but as far as the funding goes, it is a smart scale application.
Another question. I've been on council 8 years, and I've been blessed to do 4 more. We know about Pewsville flooding. You know about it, we know about that. And city manager has been so gracious to allow us to talk with some people who's been talking about this. And the more I get into it and starting to understand both sides, it's almost like something we do, and I don't know if we do it intentionally. It seems as though we pass things down. I would just like to know, what are the reasons why we're not getting these villages fixed? How much it's going to cost, where we can get it fixed? Because one of the bad days that had that rainstorm, and I witnessed, and I went around there that day, and it happened all over Hampton, or Suffolk. I mean, the water was so high in the people's yard that you didn't see no grass. So what I'm saying to you is that I know you're allocating money, but I'd like to know how much money you're going to give these villages for the flood, this water problem. I don't have my book, but I just wanted to know, because they have good reasons and good answers and questions, and you can't keep saying over and over the same thing, because it's going to rain. It's going to rain. So happen we in wetlands, but it's going to rain. And I think it's time for us to, if we're going to say we're going to do something, let's put it out there how we can do it and see how much it would cost and see where we can start it, or at least the people don't have to come every year, the same thing over and over. And we go and spend whatever we spend for people to go and come back with some answers, and that seems like that's stay on the shelf. I'm not saying, but it seems like we don't get no movement on some of the projects that we already know about. And like I said, Pewsville people have been talking to me for 8 years about the same flood, with sidewalks flood. I just wanted to see that we can get some better clarification of what it would take for some of that flooding stop, or we can do what, and you know that right now, they done got Chesapeake involved of the flooding, and they passing a buck. And we didn't done us, we waiting for Chesapeake, Chesapeake said we're waiting for Suffolk. I just want to get some better clarification, just be telling these citizens, residents the same thing.
Good.
And we meeting, I appreciate that, Al, but, as a city of Suffolk, we should get an idea of somebody coming to tell us what we need to do. We already know that, but it's just I want to see if we can get some really good answers, and we know where we have to go with these people in these small villages, especially the flooding.
Councilman, of course, we have that meeting coming up
Right, thank you.
with the Pughesville residents, and of course, which LJ has informed me, and we've talked about, that requires some improvements on the Chesapeake side prior to our improvements. And so he's tried to time this out in the CIP to match that up. As you see in the CIP, there is, I think it's year 2 and 3, there's funding for some of that Pughesville work, which follows up some of the Chesapeake improvements they need, because we can't force water down on it when they can't handle it yet. So they're doing their improvements to allow that water to be taken downstream. So that's how the stormwater for that area. Of course, stormwater overall in the city is a question. I mean, we have areas that during peak rains, especially with that 6.5-inch rain that I think you were referring to, that's quite a bit of water that goes in a lot of areas in this city, and we had a lot of areas that had problems that particular day. We do have some issues that when we have just a normal rain that back up. So as we talk about stormwater and it's as an enterprise fund, there are some questions that need to be there, both from an expenditure side and a revenue side. So that is something that we may need to discuss as we come forward on the operating budget, to help, what can we help to expedite projects, and how are we going to fund them a little bit more efficiently. So, and of course, as an enterprise fund, you tend to look at it being not all self-supporting, because we do have money in the villages that go towards stormwater, in the village plan of this and some other areas, but we do need to take a look at how we fund our stormwater program better.
I appreciate what you've done, and you have been on target when I call and I get some answers, and I appreciate the meetings that we're having for giving them opportunity to express their feelings, and we can tell them. And one thing about it, we tell them the truth. This is what it takes. This is how we're gonna do it. It ain't gonna be done this year, 5 years, but once they see progress going on, at least they know we're doing it, instead of pushing it off, getting somebody to come and look at how much what we already know. They already know the problem. They're pretty good with telling you what the flooding is. So, like I said, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. God bless.
Councilman Johnson?
I'm going to try to be brief. I wasn't going to be, but now I'm going to be. Al, my first comment is about the stormwater, and I thank you for what you just said, because I think this council and you and all of our city employees are going to have to really start looking at. That's a huge problem that is we're all dealing with it right now. And our city is flooding, like all cities in America, and we've got to come up with a way to counteract it. And I agree that we have got to start taking care of the citizens. The other thing is, first thing on my list was, thank you for putting together a good CIP. It was very well put together. I still have a few issues. With the school system, though, the fact that we moved JFK up to the 3rd year, thank you for doing that. I can't believe that that's going to be where they're going to be in the 3rd year, however, because we have so many issues we haven't even looked at yet. Once the school report comes back to us, I was hoping we'd have all that before this goes forward, but I think it's a good CIP for what we have to work with. But hopefully we will look at the fact that John F. Kennedy is one of 3 middle schools that were built at the same time, and they're all 3 in trouble, huge trouble. So we've got big things to face down the road, so I hope the school board is well aware of what we've got to do. The biggest thing on my list is, Al, every 100 years, something happens that makes you change the way you do business. And that's what I feel about the internet service capability to our community. We have been woken up, and it is time for us to take command. I don't disagree with planning. I think I don't want to waste the money. If we don't have a plan in place to use it, no, I don't want to waste it now, but we can find the money to fix this thing somewhere. Cheelan's good. She can find it. But my point being, this is something the citizens aren't willing to wait for anymore. We have got to get internet out in the rural areas of this city. I mean, we have got to. We owe it to the citizens of this city. And I really would like to see it go forward in some way. So I would like to come back with a plan that this is what we can do, but be a real plan that say that when we complete the project, this is where we're going to be. I think that's what the citizens are looking for now. So I agree with planning 100% that we need to maybe not move all the money, but get it to the point that we have a real plan in place that we're going to solve some issues, and through the state, federal government, whatever. I do agree with that. LJ, the Pitch Kettle Road project, where is that? I kept looking for it and I didn't see it.
It should be in there under, I think it's under major programs, but let me double check real quick.
Make sure, because I looked and looked and I can't read.
It might be fully funded. I'm going to go with the recommendation of our finance director that it might be fully funded, but you got me scrambling here trying to find it.
That's okay. Well, as long as I know it's there, that's important to me, and I think it's something that should be important to the city. I want to make sure it's moving forward.
It is not pulled, I will tell you, it is not pulled from the CIP. It is,
It's in the CIP?
In our records, we show it as being fully funded.
Okay, I just couldn't
when the
find it
funding
in
is-
writing. Oh,
Thank you.
That's all good. I agree with Mr. Goldberg about the rec center. If we're going to start to make this huge investment downtown, which I'm excited about, and I hope we're all excited about it, so we can get our downtown moving in a very positive direction, I think having the rec center in the plan would be a big part of, sometimes we tend to put off, and this is a case where I think it would behoove all of us to kind of move the thing forward enough so that we've got something we can look at and see that can be a part of where we're pushing downtown. I don't disagree with Mr. Goldberg on that. I think it would work. The other things with Parks and Rec, and I'm going to say it, I'm not asking for anything, I'm just saying for our future, where our city is heading in the future with our parks and with our rec centers, we have a very big city, and everybody in the city should be a part of it. And in my borough particularly, I get it all the time. What's in the CIP for us? We've got the Blackwater, we're happy about that, but the people that live in that borough just wonder where we stand. I'm not asking for anything, I'm just saying we need to take a broad look at it for the future so that we all are aware of where we're heading with our rec centers and with the water facility and all of these things. So that's the responses I get. And that's it. But thank you guys for a good job.
If I may for just a minute, Pitch Kettle Road was in last year's CIP and is fully funded, and so it's not showing up in this year's
Good.
because
Okay,
there's
thank
no
you.
additional money that needs to go
I didn't
towards it.
realize it was fully funded. That's a good thing. All right, thank you.
Council, have any other comments or questions from Ms. Hanson?
Yes, Mayor.
Oh, Councilman Williams, down there in the corner.
Thank you, Mayor. I just would like to piggyback off what Councilman Goldberg, Vice Mayor, Councilman Fawcett, Councilman Johnson talked about as it relates to the broadband connection. I too have heard a lot of complaints from the rural area, the rural section of my borough, as well as other rural areas within the city. I think we do need to move the funding forward. I think we need to find a way because our kids, the students are suffering. The family members that are working from home are suffering. We have to get broadband in the rural areas. So whatever it takes, COVID has put us in a position where, hey, we can't wait any longer. It's something that we need to address, and I like to see us move forward. That's all I have, Mayor.
Ms. Hanson, just a quick comments, and I will be brief. In regards to broadband, obviously, I call it the top three in issues that we have throughout the city, and it sounds like we've got maybe three sources of funding right now. The money we're setting aside now, the VATI money, and possibly some CARES money that we could look at to try to rectify some of the immediate issues if it's at all possible. So, it's kind of high on the list of priorities for sure. The Route 17 Crittenden Road project seems like it's escalated a little bit as far as cost is concerned. The relocation of Zone C, I'm really excited to see that in there. That'll be a catalyst for some other moves down the road, kind of a domino effect, and that'll open up Lone Star Lakes also. The dog park at Sleepy Hole, I think I just had an email on that 2 days ago about a dog park. I know it's small, but I think it'll be a welcome addition. Dedicating almost $1 million to the downtown implementation plan, along with some funds that we've already set aside. We should be able to make a noticeable difference in that downtown, I call it downtown throughfare, throughway, whatever you want to call it, yeah. Right through the heart of downtown where we see we're making some progress there. I know we talked about signage and looked at studies and that sort of thing. I'm glad that we're looking at 4 bays initially for the fire station out in College Park. That's excellent, and I don't think it'll be as much as even Councilman Fawcett thinks it is, because basically you're just extending out the walls. You're not building a separate 1,000 square feet, so hopefully we'll be able to make that happen. I'm a little concerned about the schools and our capacity to come close to being able to fund what they're going to be looking for. Just looking at the CIP for the next 5 years, looking at our threshold for borrowing, I think we're going to have to find a way to have someone pull some rabbits out of the hat to make some of these things happen. The facility study, the first week in February, is going to be huge. It's just a matter of prioritization. And to Councilman Ward's comments, I mean, that prioritization from the school system can change every year based on what our ability is. So if they want to put more emphasis on one thing than another, I mean, obviously JFK is at the top, and I think that the total number for JFK was like 48 million. Sounds really high, but that's what it is. I did notice now the Operations Center, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the second phase, I might be wrong, was presented initially at about $8 million, and now it's about 2.5. So I'm just kind of curious how that.
The operations facility is 12.
It might have been 12, but something tells me it was like 4 and 8 to start with, and the 4
Currently
went to 5.
12.5, and yes, that number has gone up as the years have gone by since we started talking about it.
So has it gone from 8 to 12?
Sounds correct, yes.
Sounds correct. Okay. My memory's not as bad as I thought it was. All right, let's see. Public safety. And I think that takes care of my comments. I want to thank everybody for their efforts in putting the CIP together. Once again, that's a massive project that was started months out with input from a lot of individuals on staff, planning commission, their efforts. And like I said, as I tell people, we'll try to do the best we can with what we got. And that's kind of what this is. You know, we have limited resources, and we just need to ensure that the resources are distributed equitably, and we do the most we can with the dollars that we have available without infringing or running awry of the financial policies that we've set in place. Does anyone have any other questions for Ms. Hanson? If not, thank you very much for your presentation. And we have a motion for a closed meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please present the motion for consideration?
Pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A8 and A1, consultation with legal counsel employed by a public body regarding specific legal matters, requiring the legal advice of such counsel on the discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for appointment, and the assignment, appointment, and performance of specific public officers or appointees of the city, specifically the appointments as shown on the attached list for vacancies or term expirations for the Early Childhood Development Commission, the Economic Development Authority of the City of Suffolk, the Fine Arts Commission, Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities Alliance, Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission, Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization, Human Services Advisory Board, Local Board of Building Code Appeals, Southside Network Authority, Suffolk Redevelopment and Housing Authority, the Planning Council, the Tidewater Emergency Medical Services Council, and the Wetlands Board, and the Chuckatuck Borough vacancies on City Council. Item number 2, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A5 and A7, the discussion of a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the business or industry's interests in locating or expanding its facilities in the community, and consultation with legal counsel employed by or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of such legal advice by counsel specifically concerning an EDIP proposal regarding Project Coastal.
A motion by Councilman Fawcett, second by Goldberg. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Fawcett?
Yes.
Councilmember Goldberg?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ward?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bennett?
Yes.
Mayor Dooman?
Yes.
The motion is approved by a vote of 7-0.
That concludes our work session. We will reconvene at 6 PM.